and welcome to another episode on Maritime Radar. Nigeria's natural maritime endowment base is vast and extensive, spanning 84,000 square meters, with a coastline of over 800 kilometers and an exclusive economic zone of over 200 nautical miles. Putatively seen as one of the longest in the world, is estimated at nearly 3,000 kilometers, which comprises of over 50 rivers that can strongly support intra-continental and intra-regional trade. Government and industry stakeholders must commit to re-equipping the industry to maximize its untapped potentials for the benefit of the Nigerian economy. Repositioning Nigeria's maritime industry for greater efficiency and to harness its untapped potentials are some of the issues that will be on the front burner on today's show. I'm Nneoma Obi-Asualo. Looking at one of the clauses of the United Nations Convention, Nigeria is one of the 8 nations that is authorized to extend its maritime waters by 150 miles further from the existing 200 nautical miles limit. Sadly, government and its agencies seemingly has no corresponding interest in understanding that the maritime industry is huge, especially now that oil and gas are moving away from the center stage. Maritime experts say with the involvement of the private sector, Apapa can be transformed in just 6 months with rails and roads such that movement of cargoes becomes seamless. Before we get further into today's lineup on the program, let's find out the latest in maritime news.
The Defense Headquarters has said that the vessel recently caught with stolen crude was destroyed instantly as required by standard procedure. Director, Defense and Media Operations, Major General Edward Buba, at a briefing in Abuja, noted that the procedure stipulates instant destruction of any vehicle, vessel or equipment linked with crude oil theft. The MT Tura II was intercepted on July 7th while conveying 150,000 metric tons of stolen crude oil from Nigeria to Cameroon, with 11 Nigerians and 1 Ghanaian on board. The vessel was set ablaze on July 11th. The MT Tura II had a tank capacity of 800,000 liters and was previously named Ali Rita Bay, as an inspection revealed that only 2 compartments were partially filled with about 150 metric tons, which is approximately 178,000 liters. This quantity is less than a quarter of the vessel. The captain admitted to having been engaged in some illegal activities over the past 4 years. The defense spokesperson added that troops of Operation Delta Safe discovered and destroyed 23 illegal refining sites, 15 wooden boats, 34 storage tanks, and 96 ovens in the past 2 weeks, and has also recovered 367,200 liters of crude oil and 150 liters of automotive gas oil. The Tinkan Island Port Area Command of Nigerian Customs Service handled 291,436.43 metric tons of export in the first half of 2023. This represents an increase of 110.8% over the 138,246.5 metric tons handled in the first half of 2022. The Customs Area Controller of the Command, Adekunle Oloyede, in a statement put the free on-board value of the exports at 182.33 billion naira, which he said is 65% higher the FOB value of 110.45 billion naira for the volume handled in the corresponding period of 2022. The export commodities handled at the command include cocoa butter, cocoa beans, cashew nut, sesame seeds, rubber, empty bottles, copper ingots, and more. Oloyede added that the command collected 260.26 billion naira's revenue between January and June 2023, which is about 5% lower than the 274.32 billion naira collected in the corresponding period of 2022. The U.S. Department of Defense has announced plans to deploy even more forces to the U.S. Central Command Area of Responsibility in response to Iran's attacks and seizures of commercial ships in the Persian Gulf and Gulf of Oman. CENTCOM said the Secretary of Defense has ordered the deployment of an amphibious readiness group of Marine Expeditionary Unit to the region. This comes in addition to the announcement that the U.S. Navy destroyer USS Thomas Holdner, along with additional fighter jets, including F-35s and F-16s, would be sent to the Strait of Hormuz. The force deployment comes after Iran's attack, an attempt to seize nearly 20 international flagged ships in the region since 2021. CENTCOM's announcement said the amphibious readiness group will provide additional aviation maritime assets and U.S. Marines. A joint meeting of senior officials from the International Maritime Organization, the World Maritime University, and the IMO International Maritime Law Institute has been held to enhance cooperation between the IMO and its two global maritime training institutions. The meeting focuses on key strategy matters and common policy areas of interest to align the institution's work with the IMO's objectives and goals. Presided over by IMO Secretary General Kitak Lim, the meeting looked at how the two maritime training institutions could further contribute to the regulatory and technical assistance work of the IMO. At the end of the meeting, it was agreed that the trilateral meeting, which followed a similar one in 2020, will be held on an annual basis.
Africa needs its own storytellers, people who understand the continent because they're from it. People who know that news is more than just a conversation starter, it's our stories. Because these stories run deeper than headlines and segments. It's about digging deeper to get the facts and telling the human side of every single story, not just the echoes from foreign headlines and perspectives. It's time to take back our narratives and share them in our voices. The birth of Africa's New Age reporting, and this is where it begins, right here at News Central TV. Stories that put Africa first.
If you're just joining us, this is Maritime Radar. Nigeria generates 80% of the cargo that comes from the West and Central Africa, but the goods ends up going elsewhere. Joining me on the program to set a maritime industry agenda for the new government of Nigeria is the prolific and renowned maritime lawyer, a senior advocate of Nigeria and founder of Olisa, Agbakoba Legal. Stay with us. Okay, it's good to have you on the show, sir.
Thank you.
Let's start this conversation looking at the worth of Nigeria's maritime industry, if harnessed, and how will you assess its development?
The worth of the industry is very huge. I think outside of oil and gas, it's probably second, but that would mean they need to properly harness the resources that we have. And as you know, there are different subsectors in the industry. So, for instance, if you talk about ports, Apapa Port, if fully renovated, should do like 20 billion a day. That's about 8 trillion, which is almost equal to our budget of at least about a third of the budget. Cabotage, another huge area that could do about 7 trillion. The maritime zones that extends Nigeria's EEZ by another 150 nautical miles should do something like 5 to 6 trillion. all the levies that oil rigs should be paying, which they don't pay, 5 trillion, and just finally, I mean, there are lots of, revenue streams. So let me say 20 trillion is a possibility.
Okay, so if we are supposed to make as much as this, why is the maritime industry not harnessed, and how can we assess its development?
The reason for it not being harnessed is that the government has never paid serious attention to the industry. I mean, if you look at all the development plans, both in the Buhari government and the Jonathan government, I don't recall now the development plan of President Obasanjo, but I don't think anyone ever spoke about the industry. Even in the campaign documents of the presidential candidates, they paid very little attention to the industry. So a couple of recommendations. One would be the need to appoint a Minister of Maritime Affairs. Aviation has a minister, and I think maritime is a lot bigger. So when we have a minister, that would draw attention, because he'll be able to possible level about what this industry can do. So I would hope that President Tinubu will bear that in mind, appoint a Minister of Maritime Affairs, appoint experts who can assist in unlocking the big potential in the industry. Make sure we enforce all our laws, particularly the Cabotage Act. We now have about 25,000 foreign vessels illegally working in Nigeria's coastal trade area. They must all leave. And if that happens, then Nigerians will be able to take the space, buy vessels, and do cabotage trade. That brings business. So the reason why things are this bad in the industry is simply because the policy framework for the industry is very, very poor.
So we are losing revenue because of all you have mentioned here. So how do we address it, aside from the separate ministry you have advocated for?
If you have a Minister of Maritime Affairs, then at least he's a policy person at a high level. He sits at the Federal Executive Council, which doesn't happen now. He has contact with the president, and therefore he can bring these ideas. The reason why these ideas have not flown very high, the highest person in the government that deals with maritime policy is actually the Director of Maritime Services. That's a lowly position in the Ministry of Transport. So his reach is above his pay grade to talk to the president about what's happening. And that's why, as I said, the opportunities in this industry or sector has been absolutely neglected.
Okay, so how can we draw the attention of government? What steps should be taken?
By what we're doing now. Yeah, by the sort of thing we're doing, we have to keep talking. Anywhere we are, we in the industry must keep talking, whether it's SOAN, Chamber of Shipping. People need to, speak and make clear that our voice is heard. Very important.
Okay, we have a new government in place now by President Bola Tinubu. What agendas do you think we should set for the maritime industry, looking at this new government in place?
Well, he's appointed a special advisor on revenue.
Okay.
So the agenda I would set would be to say to the special advisor on revenue that this is a sector that can bring a. And I would also say that the goal of government should be to wipe out its debt deficit of about 80 trillion. And if well harnessed, this industry can play a big role in bringing down the debt burden. So I would say I hope to see an effective Minister of Maritime Affairs. I hope to see effective coordination of the maritime industry. The Shippers Council presently plays the role of economic regulator, but there has to be a law for that to work properly. Then we need to also say to government that there are things that the private sector does better. So one of that would be all the ports need to be concessioned. MPA needs to become a clearly landlord port. All the services must be concessioned out so we can save a lot of money. We need to build new ports. The current Apapa is about going to 100 years old. Calabar is about the same age. So our ports are not effective and efficient. I hope you know that if 10 containers are coming to the Central West African region of about 20 countries, it's destined for Nigeria. But nobody wants to come here. They divert to Tema in Ghana or the Cotonou ports because these ports are far too dangerous. The channels coming into Lagos waters are in need of dredging. So the infrastructure around our ports is so poor that we lose a lot of revenue. So there's a lot of work to be done. The government obviously cannot fund port development. So I would expect the Ports and Harbour Bill that has been in Parliament for at least 15 years to be passed very quickly, because that's what's going to give investors confidence to want to come to Nigeria. So if they invest their money, there's a legal framework to which they can work and get their returns. So there are a couple of big bills that need to go into the National Assembly very, very quickly if we want to optimize the. Yeah.
You had mentioned building new ports, but we have some ports in the eastern part of the country where have not been, utilized. But we will talk about that after this short break. Please stay with us.
News Central TV, Africa's #1 storyteller, has come with the best of both worlds. With a combination of news app and live TV, we ensure that you keep track of the latest headlines, breaking news, and in-depth analysis from professional journalists from around the continent. Download the News Central TV app on Android and iOS and get started today. Don't forget to follow us on News Central's social media platforms. News Central, Africa First.
If you are just joining us, this is Maritime Radar, and I still have with me Olisa Agbakoba. Before we went on that break, you had mentioned building more ports. Do you think that is what we should do, or revive the ports we have in this eastern part of the country?
No. Without the port infrastructure, you can't be in business because you must move your goods. Trade facilitation requires inland and ocean port systems. So you must revamp the ports you have, Lagos, Calabar, Port Harcourt. You must also put in new ports, and those ports are to be found. There's one going on right now in Agbakoba. The one in Deep Sea in Lekki is almost ready. The one in Oguta will be very good because the water there is deep. The port there is deep. It's about 21 meters. The draft is very good. There's one in Abia, Azumiri, which has also got a big draft. So you've got to put ports everywhere. It's the only way you can trade. You've got to put ports. Nigeria needs about something like 15 to 16 ports. That's one. Two, we need to also think about the inland waterways. Our colonial masters or colonial authorities understood the power of inland waterways. There were actually about 4 waterways, and this moved cargo. There's one very important one in near Lokoja called Baru, very important. So that fed Onitsha. Onitsha also fed Ihiala, and all these things pushed out to Port Harcourt for exports. So you have to have inland ports and you have to have ocean ports. The entire thing comes together to make the country have, a very mobile port system where you can actually move goods. Right now, we use the roads, and the roads are not the best for heavy movement of cargo.
But with these other ports, alternatives we have, everyone seems to be coming to Lagos, which is causing a total collapse in the Lagos ports. What do you think should be done to address this urgently, because we have a collapse of infrastructure in the Lagos port?
Yeah, exactly what I've just said. Prioritizing the industry, understanding that there's a lot of money in it, and then saying Lagos is overcongested. And actually, 8 out of 10 containers that come into the Lagos port ends up in Onitsha and then comes back here. So you can see the inefficiency. George Mohalo has MD, Managing Director of Nigerian Land Waterways, just tried to put in something in to make the Onitsha ports active by, moving barges from Port Harcourt to Onitsha. That's something, but the way to go would be to dredge the River Niger, make it more accessible to at least medium-sized vessels that can lighter, bigger vessels, so that everywhere you go around Nigeria, we have two big rivers, Benue and the River Niger. These ports are not being utilized at all. So we need to make this process work in a holistic way.
Another challenge we have in the industry is also shipping development, which is the core mandate of NIMASA. You were part of the making of the cabotage regime in Nigeria. How will you assess the implementation 20 years after?
Colossal failure. The act is not being enforced, and therefore you rarely would say that, you would not really say that Nigerians have gotten their teeth into the cabotage trading opportunities. It's dominated by foreign vessels, which shouldn't happen. Nigerians should be the ones to drive the business of cabotage. Speaking broadly about how government institutions are arranged, if I had the opportunity, I would, for instance, because we're all looking for money, revenue, I would take away the function of revenue collection from customs, because customs does two things. It does revenue collection and customs enforcement. I'll take the revenue function from customs and put it in a new national revenue service and replace the FIRS. And then what remains of customs, I would put it with immigration and create a new national border agency. Now, this new national border agency will take over the function of patrolling Nigeria's entire borders, including maritime. So I will take away maritime security from NEMASA and put it to the border agency. NEMASA cannot do maritime security, ship development, cabotage, maritime labor, and all the other functions that they do. Blue seas, no, it's too much.
Okay, going back to the CVFF, we see the impact. How do we unravel this mystery of this disbursement?
There's no mystery. NEMASA is not the right agency to disburse money. It's not a bank. So that's the problem. There's no mystery at all. If you give money to an agency that doesn't have the expertise to deal with funds, it won't work. I would have thought that either you have a maritime bank, which has been a long-standing matter in our discussions in the maritime circle, or you just nominate a bank or two that will handle that. So funds that come in would then be disbursed according to the risk analysis of banks. Banks give credit along the clearly defined methods. So it wouldn't be a big problem. So when you call it a mystery, it isn't a mystery, just that the money is in the wrong place.
The non-implementation of this CVFF fund is affecting indigenous shipping, causing foreign causing seafarers not to have sea time, and a multitude of problems around them. So since this is not discussed, what do you think we should do, the way forward?
So I would say the Minister of Maritime Affairs, if they do appoint a minister, should take a policy decision and move the money to the relevant banking institution and authorize that banking institution to give the money out to those who have capacity and whose proposals would show that if given the money, they can pay back. So NEMASA would not be responsible for being a bank when it is not a bank. In that way, you get the money into the hands of those who need it. And in turn, we'll buy ships. When we buy ships, you have sea time. So there's all sorts of things. And when you have ships, the ships can carry Nigerian cargo. I mean, it's unbelievable that no Nigerian vessel, to my knowledge, carries our crude oil. None. It's all foreign dominated. So Shell nominates vessels in respect of the crude it produces and takes the money. Why should that be? This is our heritage. So these are the sorts of things that will happen if you create the relevant policies and the right opportunities. So that crucial issue of CVFF, I think, needs to be addressed very quickly so that the money lot of capable Nigerians who can buy vessels and then can trade either wet or hard cargo, whatever cargo they are trading in, and they can then bid for Nigerian crude that we're exporting. Why should Nigerians not be part of the export of our product? Why would the foreign vessels dominate it to our exclusion?
It's sad.
I think so. I think it's crazy, not just sad.
Well, our time is not always our friend when we are talking important things like this. So I must thank you most kindly for your time on the show. It's been
Pleasure.
Agbakoba. He is a renowned maritime lawyer. I appreciate your time on the show.
Africa needs its own storytellers, people who understand the continent because they're from it. People who know that news is more than just a conversation starter, it's our stories. Because these stories run deeper than headlines and segments. It's about digging deeper to get the facts and telling the human side of every single story, not just the echoes from foreign headlines and perspectives. It's time to take back our narratives and share them in our voices. The birth of Africa's New Age reporting, and this is where it begins, right here at News Central TV, with stories that put Africa first.
And that's our show this week. I hope you enjoyed it. I did. Every week, join us on Maritime Radar as we explore factors that will ensure the development of the maritime sector in Africa. You can also expect the latest in global maritime news and industry insights right here. I'm Nneoma Obi-Asualo. Many thanks for watching. See you again next week.